All right, guys. So we got to talk about woke DA Alvin Bragg, aka Fat Alvin, who is bringing criminal charges against Trump for alleged falsification of business records in relation to a hush money operation. Now, this is 30 plus felony counts from a woke DA who has a history of dropping felonies to misdemeanors, okay, aka being soft on crime. But when it comes to Trump, who's the former president of the United States, who's public enemy number one to the Democrats, he wants to all of a sudden become tough on crime, okay? And he's raising misdemeanors to felonies against Trump, okay? This guy is definitely trying to be the mayor of New York City, maybe the governor of New York, maybe even president of the United States one day. And he knows that the easiest way to gain fame from the mainstream liberal media and the broader national audience is to go after Trump, okay? It's a playbook that Democrats have used ever since Trump declared that he was running for president. However, this guy may have crossed the line with this frivolous criminal case against Trump that was not pursued by the feds, okay? The DOJ decided, hey, you know what? We're not going to pursue this, okay? We don't really see any campaign finance stuff going on here. Most people who've looked at this before, even the prior DA that was working in Manhattan before Bragg got in office, it's like, nah, we're not going to go after Trump criminally here. They've all said, look, we're not doing this. And this guy all of a sudden decides that, hey, I'm going to go after Trump for some nonsense that they otherwise would not be going after anybody over. But again, this guy is trying to score some political points. But again, he may have stepped too far, okay? He may have went too far. And he has attracted federal attention from the Republicans in Congress, specifically the House Judiciary Oversight Committee, who has now, led by Jim Jordan, launched a subpoena into Bragg's office, particularly this guy who used to work for Bragg named Mark Pomerantz. Okay, he's an anti-Trumper just like Bragg, who left private practice to actually work in Alvin Bragg's office. And this guy has so much Trump derangement syndrome that he actually left private practice specifically for the purposes of trying to investigate and go after Trump at the Manhattan DA office. Now, the funny part is that this guy ended up quitting because woke DA Alvin Bragg, when he initially came in, he indicated that, hey, I'm not really going to go after Trump when it comes to some of the stuff that the Attorney General of New York, Letitia James, was looking into with Trump, right? Making a broad insurance and tax fraud scheme that they was looking into. They never found anything, right? So this guy got pissed and was like, I'm going to take my ball and go home because you're not investigating Trump anymore, right? So Jim Jordan and the Republicans in the House are trying to subpoena this guy to come into Congress and to discuss how federal funds are being used to investigate a former president of the United States, or at least that is the legal reasoning for it, right? The justification to get them to come in to say, hey, this is, related to the federal government in some way. But we know the real reason. The real reason is because we want to know what's going on the inside in regards to the justification from the DA office for going after Trump, which we know is politically motivated. And the reason why we know, basically, woke DA Alvin Bragg has admitted it himself, because he is actually trying to stop this subpoena from happening by suing Jim Jordan and the congressional Republicans who are trying to make his former colleague come and testify before Congress. Now, this lawsuit is absolutely pathetic, right? It is so pathetic that even a progressive legal expert called the lawsuit more destructive than the hearings themselves, right? So you have lefty legal experts basically saying that this lawsuit from woke DA Alvin Bragg is basically desperation, okay? This guy is panicking. He's panicking. I mean, listen to this legal expert on MSNBC talk about how this is going to be an uphill battle for Bragg. Take a look.
Joining us now, senior legal affairs contributor for Politico, Josh Gerstein. Josh, good morning. So talk a little bit more, if you would, about what prompted this lawsuit from Alvin Bragg and what the specific complaint is and where it goes from here.
Well, Willie, the lawsuit is aimed at this subpoena to Mark Pomerantz, who is actually not a current prosecutor for Alvin Bragg, but had a falling out with Alvin Bragg about a year ago when Alvin Bragg, who had recently come into office, signaled that he wasn't going to bring a broad tax and insurance fraud kind of case against Trump in criminal court. That led Pomerantz and one of his aides to resign. But since then, there's been an effort by Jordan and other House Republicans to try to use Pomerantz as kind of a vehicle to get inside Bragg's office and Bragg's thinking, not only on that criminal case that wasn't brought, but the one that was just brought in the last couple of weeks, dealing with, narrower issues relating to Trump and those payments to Stormy Daniels and to another woman. So Republicans hope that Mark Pomerantz is their way into this investigation, and Bragg decided to sort of take a preemptive move, go into federal court, interestingly, in New York, not down here in Washington, D.C., and see if he can halt this subpoena. But I do think it's going to be an uphill battle for Bragg.
Yeah, I mean, Josh, it looks like Republicans are going to come back and say, look, hold on a second, Pomerantz has already written the book. This is all out there in public, and so how can you stop him from testifying when people have already read what he has to say?
Right. I mean, that's the trickiest part of this, Caddy. Given that Pomerantz wrote the book, it's hard for him to sort of take the position that I can't say one word to you now. I need to zip my lip because of this current prosecution that's going on. The other thing going on in this suit is kind of turning the tables. Remember, back when Trump was in office, you had all these Democratic-led investigations out of Congress trying to get various documents like his tax returns, and then Trump would often say, well, those aren't legitimate investigations. This is something Congress is doing that's purely political. And now we have Bragg trying to, basically adopt those arguments and say Congress has no legitimate business looking into an investigation being conducted by a Manhattan district attorney.
Yeah, so even MSNBC's own legal analyst is like, I don't know about this. I don't know about this from the woke DA Fat Alvin. Now, let's actually listen to Jim Jordan's response to this. And then after that, we will listen to Senator John Kennedy's response to woke DA Alvin Bragg suing to try to stop them from probing his office. Take a look.
They're obstructing our investigation, Brett. We have a constitutional duty to get to the facts, particularly when you have a district attorney interfering with the most important election we have, which is the election of the commander-in-chief, the president of the United States. And understand what happened here. Alvin Bragg used federal funds to indict a former president for no crime. And then when we ask questions about it, when we want to investigate, he takes us to court. And he takes us to court because we want to talk to someone who left the DA's office a year ago, who went out and wrote a book on this very subject, did all kinds of interviews, was pushing to go after President Trump before he got there, while he got there, when he left, he wrote a book about it, and we're not allowed to talk to him to do our duty. They're obstructing our constitutional duty to do oversight.
Bring in Republican Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana. He also sits on the Judiciary Committee. Senator, it's always good to have you with us. Well, what's your reaction to this news this afternoon? What do you think of it?
Pre-terminating the issue of whether Mr. Bragg should be called before Congress, I've watched Mr. Bragg. It's clear he is not exactly Oliver Wendell Scalia. My guess is he is scared to come before Congress. I watched Mr. Bragg's press conference after he announced his indictment. He was not impressive. I have read his indictment. Legal scholars much more qualified than I have criticized it as being an inferior document. I read it. It looked to me like, as a legal product, someone knocked over a urine sample. My guess is Mr. Bragg will not try this lawsuit himself. A good criminal defense attorney, based on what I've seen so far, will take his head off. So he doesn't want to be naked and alone, not literally, but figuratively, in front of a congressional committee having to answer tough questions. That's my assessment.
Just on the legal grounds of whether or not Bragg, whether or not Jordan and his committee can compel the Manhattan DA or someone who used to work for him, Mark Pomerantz, to come down and be subpoenaed about this case. Bragg is saying that's interference. He's saying that is, not that they don't have the jurisdiction to do that. It's interference of the case that he has here in New York. Just basic legal grounds. Do you agree with what he's saying or not?
I don't know. I need to read the pleadings. Congress has pretty wide jurisdiction. I am sympathetic to the separation of powers argument. But I guess the point I'm trying to make, in my opinion, some may disagree, Mr. Bragg's primary motivation is he's worried that he can't handle himself in front of tough questioning from other lawyers in the United States Congress. I mean, I've watched his performance. Mr. Soros did not pick him as his preferred DA candidate because of his legal acumen, in my opinion. He was picked because of his activism.
Yo, Senator John Kennedy be keeping it 100, bro. Right? He be keeping it all the way 100. He don't hold back. He said woke DA Alvin Bragg is out of his skis, right? He's in over his head, okay? This is above him intellectually, right? He's just not cut out for the job. He was a diversity hire, right? Affirmative action guy. Pick from George Soros. Wow. Yeah. I think he has a point, okay? Because a federal judge has already denied the Manhattan DA's Bragg request for a temporary restraining order in lawsuit against Jim Jordan. So one of the components of trying to keep Jim Jordan from subpoenaing his colleague, Mr. Mark Pomerantz, to come and testify was that, hey, he wanted a restraining order to say, hey, nope, you can't, go to Congress and do that and talk. Now, the judge has already denied that, right? So again, this guy is already getting his lawsuit destroyed in court. Okay, it's so funny. So let's read here. A federal court on Tuesday denied Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg's request for a temporary restraining order to prevent House Judiciary Committee Chairman Jim Jordan from questioning a former prosecutor about Bragg's case against former President Donald Trump. Bragg filed a lawsuit against Jordan on Tuesday in an attempt to stop him from following through on a subpoena he issued to Mark Pomerantz, a former special assistant in the Manhattan District Attorney's office, who left when Bragg took over out of frustration that Bragg paused the Manhattan office's investigation into Trump. As Breitbart reported, Bragg, according to a memorandum with the filing, is not only looking to stop Jordan quote, from enforcing this unlawful and unconstitutional subpoena by obtaining a temporary restraining order, but also to prohibit Mr. Pomerantz from complying with it. Okay, so Bragg don't want to testify, and he doesn't want his former colleague who quit because Bragg didn't hate Trump enough, right, to go after him on other bogus charges. He don't want him testifying before Congress either. Again, if this is so legitimate, why do you care about testifying before Congress, right? If your case is so airtight, okay, if this is a legitimate investigation, criminal investigation of Trump, you should be more than happy to go before Congress and the American people and to state your case, right? But when your case is built off political persecution and ambitions, this is what you get, right? A lack of transparency, right? Democrats hate transparency. They can't stand transparency. Transparency is a threat to democracy, right? The memorandum described the move to subpoena Pomerantz, which was first reported by Breitbart News last week, as an abuse of congressional authority. Quote, their latest salvo, the subpoena to Mr. Pomerantz, is an abuse of congressional process and a brazen incursion into New York's exercise of its sovereign prosecutorial powers, it stated. Well, again, I would buy in this argument if federal funds weren't being used. However, Jim Jordan's question is whether or not federal funds are used to finance what could be a political prosecution of a former president, right? Which I definitely think is something they should testify in Congress about, okay? I'm just saying. However, hours after Bragg filed his lawsuit, Trump appointed U.S. District Judge Mary Kay Biscosile denied Bragg's request for a temporary restraining order, which would have immediately blocked Jordan from following through on his subpoena of Pomerantz. The court declined to enter the proposed temporary restraining order and order to show cause. The court ordered, it is hereby ordered that plaintiff shall effect services on the defendants of the complaint together with a copy of this order, the motions plaintiff, and any supporting papers on or before 9 p.m. tonight. Judge Viscosio noted that Bragg's complaint referenced a declaration from Theodore J. Boutros Jr., but, quote, the court has not provided with this document yet, nor is it on the docket. The court also said Bragg failed to provide a copy of the subpoena served on Pomerantz. So, Bragg didn't even provide a copy of the subpoena that Jim Jordan issued against Pomerantz. Again, it looks like Senator John Kennedy was saying about woke DA Alvin Bragg being incompetent, right? It's true, okay? This guy is over his head, okay? He's in over his skis, okay? Mike Davis, founder and president of the pro-Trump Article 3 project and former chief counsel for nominations to Senate Judiciary Chairman Chuck Grassley, told Breitbart News that Bragg's lawsuit against Jordan is laughably frivolous. Soros-funded Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg's lawsuit against House Judiciary Chairman Jim Jordan is laughably frivolous, as evidenced by the fact Bragg couldn't even win a temporary restraining order, Davis said. Harvard Law should demand that Bragg return his law degree. The court gave Jordan a deadline of April 17th at 9 a.m. to file any response before the final hearing occurs on April 19th. The case is Bragg versus Jordan and the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of New York. Yeah, so as you can see there, this guy, Alvin Bragg, is taking a major L, okay, because he's panicking and scared to testify before Congress in regards to this obvious political persecution of a former president, and it looks like he's going to lose. And I got to say this, shout out to this Senate Judiciary Republicans, Jim Jordan, John Kennedy, etc., for actually being tough, right, for fighting back and pushing back against, again, what is obviously a political persecution in the best way that they can, right? And, you know, again, I just can't state enough how important it is to have strong Republicans that aren't just letting Democrats run over them, right? And that actually try to fight back. So again, shout out to them. Let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.